Hello and welcome to the Mastercam 2022 rollouts. My name is Patrick Philippek and I'm an applications engineer with Prototech Engineering. Today we're going to take a look at 2D toolpaths and design enhancements in Mastercam 2022. So one of the big changes in Mastercam 2022 that you'll see is a new mesh menu. So next to model prep, you're going to see the option of mesh. Now mesh is typically a scanned file, and there's a lot of uses for it. They've just been kind of hard to work with in the past, and we have never really had any ways of editing a mesh file before. Well, now we have a whole ribbon on how we can edit these mesh files. So we have the enhanced ability to work with these mesh files now that we didn't have previous. We can edit mesh files. We can fix mesh files if they have a hole in them or some bad surfaces. This is mainly going to be used for 3D printing and 3D scanning. So if you have a 3D printer, now we can support a mesh file, and that's usually what you are printing off of. We can also 3D scan. So if you have a 3D arm, inspection arm with a scanner on it, now you can scan them and you can bring them into Mastercam and fix them, or you can even scan with a cell phone these days. On the same part, we'll also look at check tool reach enhancements, finding unreachable areas due to undercuts. So we're trying to streamline the programming process by, before you get programming and get the operation done, that you know that tool is going to fit in there. So we'll take a look at check tool reach, and we'll see how it pertains to our current job and how it can help us going forward determine what tool will work on the part and what tool will not, so we don't waste time programming. And we now have the ability to access tools loaded in the part file. So any tools that you may think you may use that are imported into the current file, you can check any one of them and see how close they can get to cutting that actual part. Only flat bowl and ball and mill tools are going to be supported with this, but this can really streamline the programming process if you don't want to go and analyze your part. You just want to quickly see what will work and move on with that tool. Let's go ahead and take a look at these parts in Mastercam 2022. Here's a part, a mesh file that I have imported in, and this part was scanned. So this is a part for a pedal bike that has come in, and this is a mesh. So what a mesh is it's a bunch of tiny little triangles, and they're kind of hard to see on the screen here, but they're just lines connected to lines, and they can be kind of difficult to work with. So in this case here, on this part, first we're going to go ahead and take a look at the tool reach that I mentioned. So this part has a bunch of pockets on the interior and exterior. So if I come up here to my tool paths tab, there's a check tool reach option up here. And I can go ahead and select my target here. My target's going to be my whole mesh file. And now you can pick your tools. Now I have two tools in this current job. I have a 1/2 inch flat and a 1/4 inch flat end mill. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this on the 1/4 inch flat end mill. And you can manually define this out too by a cutter diameter, corner radius, overall length. We could define a holder if we had one. And down here is what we want to check against. What is reachable be blue. What is unreachable be with the tool, it'll be red. Unreachable with the holder, it'll be yellow. Unreachable by an undercut will be blue, and that's the new addition right there. So if I go ahead and preview this, we're going to see on our screen that almost all this part is reachable, with the exception of a lot of our undercuts. So see all the blue, that is showing an undercut on this part somewhere where that tool is not going to be able to reach. If we had a very large tool or a short stub tool, it will turn red if the tool could not reach that. So this is kind of just giving us an indication of what we can reach and what we can't reach before we get there. And that is in check tool reach. And once again, you can check multiple tools. I can flip it to a 1/2 inch, preview that. And my response is going to be pretty similar here because this is a pretty big part. But that will help you streamline your programming and try to not waste any time here. We can also select tools from a library from this button. That'll allow you to go browse into any library you want and grab any tools. So now we would have all of our filter options here. So maybe I could come into just end mills, and maybe I grab you know, a huge 2-inch flat end mill and preview that one out. And now we're starting to see some red on there where we aren't going to be able to reach because it's such a big tool. And that's what, you know, check tool reach will do for you. Back to this mesh file. So we have our new mesh menu up on top, and you can create simple shapes just like a solid. You can create mesh from entities. Otherwise, our modify is going to be the main one here that a lot of people are going to be using. And we can also change colors here. So one thing when a mesh file comes in here, it's all one color. It's kind of hard to separate it out, so I could machine some of these pockets. So one option we'll talk about here is explode mesh. And before we get there, we kind of want to look around here. And one thing I notice is I have a hole in here. So there's a hole that maybe didn't scan correctly on this part, and I want to repair that so I don't have any issues machining this. So what we can do is we can come up here and modify mesh faces. And I'm going to go ahead and pick repair. You have your other options. Here's create a mesh, remove facets, create a mesh. In this case here, I just want to patch this hole. I'm going to go ahead and click this white arrow. And what I'm going to get is a circle, and this is considered a brush. So when I'm in position, I hold down left click and I can brush around this problem area. So I kind of brushed around there, and I'm going to green check, and you'll see that it repaired it. It kind of filled that whole area in. Now it didn't match very well, but it did what I wanted it to do. It filled that in, so I don't have a hole there anymore. Now I don't like that. I'm not going to want to machine that. My finish is not going to come out correct, and my part's not going to be to size. So what we have in the top here is we have smooth area. When I go to smooth area, once again, I have an option to modify or copy. And this time I want to modify it. Type, do I want to select a mesh or facets? I want to select facets around here, otherwise it'll pick the whole mesh. And I'm going to go ahead and select my target. Now once again, you're going to get this brush. So you kind of can start outside of this, and we are going to brush around this area to fix. So I just brush around and grab all the facets, and you just kind of want to make sure you get all the edges also. And in here, what you're going to have is you're going to have a lot of options. You're going to have preserve curvature, minimize curvature, minimize area, or average. So you can preview these out, and by average you can kind of see it kind of try to spread it out, which ain't too bad. I could go to minimize area and preview that, and that's not as good up in these areas here. Minimize curvature. So again, not too bad, looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit of a hump in here, should be an issue. And preserve curvature. That one still has the same issues there. If I go and change this maximum iterations to like 2, you'll see that that's probably a worse result on a lot of these. That is how many times it is trying to apply smoothing. So you know, you kind of have to mess around with these numbers. Usually 10 is a pretty good number to try to get it to blend a little more. So that would be a way to fix that, you know, and that's pretty cool to be able to paint around a section and then have Mastercam fix it. So typically with mesh files, you're going to have some issues and you're going to have some repairs, typically with the scanner, because you're probably not going to get a full true scan on everything. One other thing we can do here to split this up a little bit, as I kind of was mentioning before, is we can explode the mesh. So if I go up to explode mesh and pick our model, I can preview this out, and what it'll do is it'll change this into all sorts of colors. So every different section of that model is now a color. So now I can see some nice greens in here. I can see blue. So now maybe I could come into this blue pocket and I could select out of colors on the masking on the right. So I could come in here, and now there's going to be a bunch of colors on the screen potentially when I go to toolpath that, which can be kind of nice, and it helps me visualize what I actually have on the part, and everything is a different color. So quite handy for programming and working with a mesh file. The other ones up here, you know, and it gets into more of a specific situation depending on what you want to do. There's a fill holes option I could have tried on that. You can trim to faces, trim to sheets. So we do have a big ability to use mesh files in Mastercam now that we just simply didn't have before. So if you're in that situation where you want to start using some mesh files, definitely take a look at it and see if this can help you. Other general enhancements that we did see in the software here is translate to plane. So they added that in the transform menu. So now we can translate a face of a solid or a part to a plane. So if we want to take the top side of this and flip it over to the front side, we can do that by translate to plane. That is an option now. Top level editing. This is a big change to Mastercam. We'll take a look at this in a sample file here, but pretty much any wireframe entity on the screen now, you can go and click on it at any point and edit it on the fly as you're going. Adjustment to feeds and speeds on finish pass and depth cuts, that is added. That was that's kind of funny. That was requested many times. And in 2022, it looks like they made them people happy by adding that. So on your finish passes, you can override the feed and speed if you want. So you can rough heavy and then slow it down to finish. And then on the bottom there, automatically generate toolpath. So every toolpath in Mastercam 2022 now has a generate toolpath option on the bottom. What that does is as soon as you green check out of the toolpath, it will automatically generate your toolpath for you, so you don't have to go and regen anything. That's kind of a nice one. We'll see. Note chaining. So note chaining is huge. In 2022 now we can program off of a note. Now why that is key is if it's a note, you can go and edit it at any time. By clicking on the note and changing a letter or adding a letter or a number to it. So if you're serializing numbers, you don't have to go and recreate the letters. You can just go edit the note and it'll make the toolpath dirty. All you have to do is regenerate the note and it'll update your toolpath. So that is a very key one that I really did like to see. Plane linking. We can now link a plane. So we can take a plane and we can have a parent plane and then we can have children under that. And what that means is if the parent moves, the children also move with it in the same direction, same distance. So they're kind of linked together as parents and children as an option. A little bit in design here, push-pull now supports multiple non-connected faces. So previous to 2022, if you wanted to pull a face and they were disconnected solids, you had to do one at a time. Now you can pick as many faces as you want and they will all pull out or push in the same distance and push-pull. So that is another very nice enhancement that we've seen come through. 3D high-speed dynamic Optirough is now available for mill and router products. Previous to this, you needed a 3D seat of Mastercam to be able to use dynamic Optirough. That is no longer the case. A mill seat of Mastercam will now support dynamic Optirough in 2022 Mastercam. This is going to open up a lot for the mill people. For roughing 2D parts, roughing 3D parts. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at this in an example because this toolpath has a lot of power and now pretty much everybody has the availability of this toolpath. And you're just going to access this. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's going to be in your 3D toolpaths and it's going to be called Optirough as your roughing option. And hopefully down the road we can get people that weren't using Optirough to use Optirough in roughing to utilize the power of that toolpath and how easy it is to program complex parts. Another big addition here is automatically selecting machining air and avoidance regions. So this is going to be for your 2D dynamic mill or area mill. You can use the new automatic region selection to create machining air or avoidance regions automatically based on selected solid geometry. What this is going to do is you're just going to go pick a bunch of faces, and it's going to figure it out for you what is air, what is avoidance, and what is a cut region. So you no longer have to go and pick an avoidance region, pick air regions. It automatically figures it out for you. Now you will have the ability to go back and pick machining regions the way you are used to. We still have that option in there, but the new option is on top there with the automatic regions buttons up on top there, and this works very well and is pretty nice. As I kind of mentioned, you can convert selected automatic regions by that green arrow there. If you select that, it puts the machining region in, and it also puts the air region in, kind of like you manually set it. So as I said, if you're not happy with the results out of automatic, you can flip them back to a standard way of programming as far as machining regions, air regions, and avoidance regions. Expanded air regions and avoidance region support. So this is a nice enhancement, specifically the expand region. So in the chain options, the avoidance regions options now includes a clearance value. This is a clearance, so you can say, you know, stay away this value. Now the only issue that I see with it is it's going to stay away from all the avoidance. You can't segregate that out yet into like a fixture clearance. Every clearance you pick as far as avoidance, it's going to clear by that amount. So if you put 100 thou in there, every one you have picked is going to clear by 100 thou. We also have expand region. Expand region is crucial, and I'm really happy to see that one too. This is going to be a great addition here. So the expand region, what that's going to do is if you're cutting a corner of a part, kind of like we're seeing here, it made its boundaries straight out, perpendicular to the end of the cut. What would happen there in the corners is it may not clean that up all the way because your tool cannot get outside of that boundary. So with expand regions on the right hand picture there, you'll see that it pushes it along in more of an arc move out there, so you can ensure a full cleanup cut so you're not leaving anything behind. Once again, a huge change just to make life easier on everybody here. Improvements to chain selection order. So this is a long time coming. So a dynamic mill, area mill, and dynamic contour toolpaths will include improvements to the selection order of chains. Mastercam is now going to look at, you know, your chain order, and it's going to kind of look at the Z depths. So it does every Z depth, and then it goes to the next Z depth. So it's not zigzagging all around different Z depths. You know, this they're working in the right direction here to be able to enhance this better. And as you can kind of see there, as the chain order goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is a little bit more in order. Sometimes in some of these cuts you get stuff going all over the place where you would have to go and sort them a certain way. Now Mastercam's getting a little bit more smarter with that, so you don't have to do so much work with that. Chaining direction and orientation during selection. So this is handy too. If anybody is doing a lot of work on tubes with holes going through it, when you went and selected, you know, the solid holes, sometimes you get green arrows to go the right direction, sometimes you don't. Now you have orientation of the first pick, a C-plane or an axis, and then your direction you can say defined opposite side, and you can also include blind holes at this point. So all this is going to do is really help your selection. The one on the left was a common one that you've seen. You got some arrows pointing outwards and you got a lot of arrows pointing inwards, which made it hard to fix. Now on the right picture there, you know, this one is used with the first pick, and then it takes that first pick and it pushes them all the same direction automatically for you. So this is key for your multi-axis guys, fourth axis guys, doing anything with holes going around a tube. It was always kind of a pain in the neck there. So this is a welcoming fix. Hole making enhancements. So they've really took a lot of strides in hole making. We now have collisions, so we can check for collisions and hole making tool paths. It's going to determine if you can machine a part with the defined holder and tool combination. This is going to automate the process on the screen for you. So we will be able to go in and check collisions right in the tool path. It'll be in the linking parameters page, and we can alter the stick out of the tool right inside of this check for collisions dialog. You can click and drag the holder on the graphic screen to set your projection of your tool. It'll also show you where the collisions are if you turn wireframe on. So we have an option to show collisions. And then we also have an option there called optimize projection, which will automatically set the projection as low as it can without colliding with the solid model on the screen. Take a look at this one. This one is one I really like. Selecting individual hole segments. This is a big change. So in your parameters on the left, you are now going to see hole segments. Hole segments allows you to pretty much pre-fill in all the segments on, let's say, a porthole or a counterbore. Now, your drawing has to be drawn correct. It has to be defined as a counterbore. Otherwise, we can do this inside of Mastercam. It takes a couple steps that I'll show you. But now, if you have a custom hole, you can see by the hole segments there on the screen, it shows you all the segments. You can click through all of them segments and individually program them if you want to. And it'll pre-fill all your depths in for you and your diameters. So it's taking solid geometry information and it's purging it into Mastercam now. I've been playing with this a little bit, and I think this is going to be quite handy for a lot of people. Advanced drill. So if you're not using advanced drill and you got some weird holes, I would suggest using it. If you use a solid hole, you can use the right-click menu, and you can go in and import and replace from a solid hole. So what it'll do is it'll pre-fill, kind of like I just talked about. If you're picking solid holes, you can import that from the solid hole information, and it'll pre-fill your advanced drill for you now. You can cut, copy, and paste drill segments in advanced drill. So you can take one and you have a right-click menu, and you can copy it, or you can paste it. So that mark kind of nice. Before you had to remake them every time. Now you can copy and paste if you have the same segments coming up. And maintaining surface feet a minute in a chamfer drill. So there is a new button in chamfer drilling to maintain CS. So depending where you're cutting on the flute of that cutter, it's going to figure the CS or surface feet a minute from that location. Previous to this, it was just going off the diameter of the tool, not specifically where you're cutting, and you couldn't really control that too well. So this is going to be a big help to them people that were burning off some tools. Now maybe that can help us maintain the correct speeds and feeds where we're cutting on the flute. And selecting solid holes from a solid manager. This goes back to the hole segments. What we can do is, instead of picking geometry off your screen, you can go right into the solids tree, and you can go and pick that geometry out of the solids tree, and it'll pre-fill in all of that information into our drill tool path. So once again, it's just trying to automate that out for you, so you don't have to do as much work on the front end analyzing anything. This is going to give you your diameters, your depths, and any clearance values to leap over solids automatically. So they made a lot of strides with drilling in Mastercam that we can take a look at. And we'll take a look at that next here on a bunch of examples and part files. So let's take a look at top level editing, note, and push pull to start here. So on the screen here I have some solid models. We're not really going to be utilizing the solid models in top level editing. But we will utilize these lines that are on the screen. So these are just wireframe lines. And now in Mastercam 2022, you can go ahead and edit these line entities on the fly. I simply hover over one of the lines and I double click on it. And you're going to see that the line turns yellow and you have a green, a blue, and a red dot on there. You have a little switch box here to say move, or if you toggle on it, it goes to copy. So you can move or copy these lines. So if I leave it on move here and I kind of hover over this line, I can grab this line and I can move it, you know, parallel to that line if I want, or I can move it anywhere around the screen and drop it and it'll go there. If I also hover over this, I'll get this blue arrow that pops up and I can click on that arrow, and now it's the dynamic functionality of that arrow with the ruler here that I can utilize. I can scroll in and get bigger decimal places or more decimal places, and I can always type into that blue box if I want. So if I want to move this 55 thousandths away, I can type and enter again, and it went there. If I go to copy, this is just taking a copy of this. And it's going to work the same way. I can double click on this one, I hover on it, and then I can move it with these arrows if I want to a specific distance. This also works on these end ones too. I can move it in a straight line that way, or if I just click on it, now I can move this line like this. And escape, one escape will get you out of everything in here. So once again, if I hover, I can move it out and extend that line out. So this works pretty good on lines and geometry like this if you want to move or copy them lines around. We also have an arc here. So the arc works the same way. I just double click on it and now I can increase the radial size right off the bat. I can also take this. Now this is pretty cool. Maybe I want just a 90-degree part of that pie on that circle. I can left click and there's a 90-degree. Then I could adjust it from here if I wanted. Could always grab this arrow too and I could slide it around maybe to there, and now there's my 260 degrees or whatever, 300 whatever it would be. I don't know how many degrees I went circle that I have built on there now. You have absolute and relative, so I could do a relative. You're not really going to notice anything here except when we do this, it could be relative to where you were. We can also flip this to the other side and automatically adjust that if we wanted to. So am I doing this side or do I want an arc on that side? So there's quite a bit of usability with this, kind of on the fly to be able to alter some wireframe geometry without going into the wireframe menu to do so and recreating some geometry. So this is called top level editing. And once again, to cue it, double click on an entity and then you'll get your options on here. And escape gets you out as always. It says top level editing. Check it out. See if it can help you guys out. The next thing that we're going to look at here is note. So note has changed around a little bit. So a lot of people never really looked at note as being how they're going to engrave their part. Going forward, you're probably going to change this, especially if you're doing any serialization of parts. The problem previous to this was if we created the letters through wireframe, if we had a rev change on the part number, we had to go back and recreate the letters, and that was a pain in the neck, and go and reselect the geometry to engrave it. Well, if we come up here and go to drafting and create a note, this is going to allow us to create a note like I have on the screen here. So another way you can do this is if you left click on it, the whole note will select. If I go up to drafting and go to note, it'll pop it up into the drafting parameters here. So right now in the editor, it says part number 1. That's what I have on the screen. So let's go ahead and program this. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick contour toolpath here. Now, one thing you'll notice is if you go to window this, I can window this like normal, like you do with normal letters, but it does nothing. I'm clicking here, it does nothing. It will not select that note. To select a note, you have to go to the full chain mode and you just left click anywhere in that region and it'll select that whole note for you. So now with that note selected, I can green check and it knows to go ahead and engrave that note. So I'm just going to come in here and grab a spot drill, all your standard settings here as far as engraving goes. And I'm just going to go and engrave this by, let's say, 5 thou. Now what I get on the screen here is I get a full engraving toolpath, as I would expect here. And that will go ahead and engrave that part number 1 out of there. So maybe the engineer comes to me and says, well, this isn't part number 1, this is part number 10, let's say. So what I can do is I can just simply left click on the part number under that note, go up to drafting and go to note. It's going to pop part number 1 in my left hand side here. And if I type in a 10, now my note is updated to part number 10. So I can green check, and my toolpath went dirty down here, as I would suspect. All I have to do is regenerate it. Now it's going to engrave part number 10 for me automatically. And I didn't have to go and recreate any geometry. I just had the ability to go and edit my note, and that is associated to my toolpath, which now I get part number 10. So that one there is quite handy for me and a lot of people. And I put this enhancement in a few years ago to have that ability, and looks like they got that changed. So that's a good one. And next we'll look at push-pull. Push-pull, been around in Mastercam for a long time now. One of the limitations to push-pull was you could only push-pull on one solid body at a time. Now on this screen here I have 2 solid bodies, so that always became kind of a trick. You know, I had to go and do this op, and I had to do the same thing over here to this one. So instead of doing that, we can now in 2022 we can push-pull multiple faces on separated solids. So in the model prep option, I have my push-pull. I can go and grab some faces here. So maybe I'm going to grab that face, and I'm going to grab this face, same one on this one. And I get my same arrows on there, so I can grab my arrow, and now I could drag this out. And what it'll do, that one's kind of off the screen there, what it'll do is it'll push and pull these the same on both, as you can see. So it's extending that out or pushing this one in. So now you have the ability to push-pull on different faces. You know, and you can, once again, you can always, just escape out of there if it's the wrong one. And I could grab this and pull them up at the same time, or push them in at the same time. It's probably going to be a little angry with me if I push it in. But so that's another nice little change that they made, you know, a small change, but people that are making a lot of edits on solids, if you had a disjointed body, now you can go ahead and push-pull on multiple bodies. So that was a very nice enhancement too. I kind of like that one. Same functionality here, just the ability to select multiple faces, and they don't have to be joined. So that is a little bit more on the push-pull. We'll now take a look at Optirough and auto regions and dynamic. So these are some big changes. So as I stated earlier, Optirough is now available to all our mill customers. And if you're not utilizing the Optirough going forward, you probably should, and we'll take a look at it on a part. And then outer regions and dynamic, it's kind of going along the lines of trying to auto figure out what you want to cut. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we're going to start with Optirough. So any 3D customers that are using Optirough, everybody knows the power of Optirough and how nice it is to use. This is more of a 3D-ish part with some radiuses in here. Radiuses on the inside and radiuses on top. This is a perfect example of a perfect part for Optirough. Now, Optirough can also be used on 2D parts. It's really underutilized in parts that are 2D. If we could envision that this part didn't have any radiuses on it but had all these steps, this would be a perfect opportunity for Optirough. And the trick there would be to set your step downs the same as your step ups, and it would hit every flat on that part. So let's go ahead and see what Optirough can do for us if we were a mill customer not familiar with this tool path. So I have my stock set up here. And if I want to go ahead and tool path this part, I'm going to come up to our toolpath, and it's going to be in the 3D is where you're going to be finding Optirough. If you left click on Optirough, it gets us into our newer dialog boxes here. So we have wall stock that we can leave and floor stock. So I'm going to just leave 5 thousandths on both in this case. To select your geometry, it's through this white arrow here. And I'm just going to go ahead and window my whole part and end selection. So I have 232 faces on that part. If I had something to avoid, I would also have avoidance geometry here that I could pick. And I can also make new machining groups here as we go down the list to give different wall stock and floor stock if we wanted to. Toolpath control, this is where it becomes a little bit more important to kind of know how this works. So if you don't pick a boundary chain, master cam will look at your part and it will bound it tight. It will use the extents of your part in a rectangle, and that's what it thinks it uses. If you have stock size that's bigger than your part, you need to create geometry by usually going through wireframe and going through the bounding box option and then picking the bounding box for your boundary chain. You have your strategies in here: from outside, stay inside. We also have options like skip pockets. If you don't want to cut inside the pockets, it'll skip them for you automatically. Our tool here, we can just, I'm just going to grab a 1/2 inch flat end mill. And my cut parameters page looks a lot like your standard dynamic, your step over percentages of tool diameter, your step down percentages. This is how deep you want to cut per pass, and our step up value. Now, if your step down is the same as the step up value, you're not going to get any detail on a 3D part. What you'll get is every flat will be hit on the part. So if I want a little bit finer detail on this part, I can go to like a 10% step up. And what that does is anytime that the toolpath sees a non-vertical wall, like up here, it will put this step up on the non-vertical wall only. So it's going to work heavy down and step up at a small value to put some detail on your part for your finished tools. Steep shallow, this is going to detect in your model how deep you can go. So right now I'm going to say cut to 0, and we're just going to cut to like a -3 inches, just so you can see how that works for now. And then arc filter. Arc filter is going to be one of the most important pages in here for this cut. This kicks out a lot of code. So we do recommend in here a 1/3 ratio in percentage, and then we turn our line arc filtering on right here. And typically I turn it on in all G17, G18s, and G19s. What this is going to do is any splines that it sees in the toolpath, it's going to try to refine them into arcs. It's going to decrease code, and it's going to help your machine out immensely. And as before stated, the generate toolpath here, if that's checked, when I green check, it'll automatically process this toolpath. And it is processing down in my list down here. And while they are processing, you do have the option when they're processing to go into the multi-threading. And the multi-threading will show you when it's processing where it's at. So if you ever wondered what that multi-threading was up there, that's what it is. Now I have nothing processing here, but you would be able to stop it out of here too. So that is interesting for some people to be able to use. And right off the bat here, we're seeing a tool path, quite a tool path here. So if we go and verify this tool path, we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like as far as detail goes. And this is going to be our dynamic high-speed tool path. So this has a lot of power. Typically we're cutting heavy down and then working our way back up for any detail. So as you can see here, we only work 3 inches down, but you can see the nice detail that it did put on the part for us. If we wanted finer scallops on here, we would definitely just decrease our step-up value. Now, if you're a mill customer, you used to do a part like this with multi-surface rough, which would kill your cycle time. Typically what we see with this tool path is approximately 60 to 80% cycle time reduction on roughing if you can, and a lot longer tool life, 10 times tool life for any material. We do offer training for this, so if you're unfamiliar with it, you may want to consider our dynamic training class, dynamic roughing training class that we run bi-monthly. So check that out on our website if you haven't been there. So Optirough's a big change. In my opinion, this is the best tool path in Mastercam, and it has the most power as far as roughing goes. So definitely, if you're a mill customer, you now have the ability to do this where you didn't before. Check it out and try it out. And the other thing we're going to talk about here is auto regions. So auto regions were quite a big change here. So this is going to be for our dynamic 2D mill. So we just talked about Optirough, which is a 3D specific tool path. Now dynamic 2D is our 2D dynamic motion tool path. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And we're going to go up to our 2D tool paths up on top, and we're going to look at dynamic. So now in dynamic, this page changed around a little bit. So what we have here is we now on top have automatic regions. We have a green arrow, a white arrow, and a red circle with the slash. The red circles with the slash remove what you picked. The white will allow you to pick, so I could pick automatic regions in this case. And the green is going to convert automatic regions down to machining regions if I don't like my result. So if I come in here and I'm going to just put 2 tool paths on these green surfaces to start. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to go to my solid chaining and pick faces. Everything else is gray. If I pick this face and I pick this face, this particular features in here, they have an air region on there. They have a region to cut. So let's see what we get out of this by using automatic regions right off the bat. I'm just going to leave my strategy from outside and I'm not going to touch anything else, and I'm going to preview my chain. Automatically, just by picking that face, you can see a red hash is cut and blue is air. So it automatically figured that out for me. So that's pretty cool. That's more of an automated way to do these cuts now, is we don't have to define air regions anymore every time we go and make a cut. So we don't have to pick the face and then pick an air region. It'll automatically do it for us if we use the automatic regions options up here. Now, that's pretty darn useful if you ask me. So now let's go ahead and do some more maybe complex picks down here and just see what kind of results we get. So I'm just going to continue on here. I'm just going to go and pick more regions here. And I can come in here and I can add. And I'm going to go ahead and pick this face. I'm going to pick this face, and I'm going to pick this blue face all at the same time. So I got all of these picked. And now if I come and preview my chains, now it's telling me what is cut and what is air. So what not to cut as far as boundaries go. So that is quite a useful tool. It's going to auto pick that for you and try to figure out what's what. Now if I get rid of all of these, and we're just going to take a look at this orange surface here. And if we preview the chains, you'll see that it recognizes where air is here. It recognizes where air is here, and it recognizes my boundaries. So it's almost an automatic pick. You would have the ability to go back, like always, and go and pick these with your normal set that you're used to here. So if you don't like the results you're getting here, you can always go back to the way it was and just select your machining chains, pick your avoidance regions, pick your air regions. It would be exactly the same as you're used to. Same with containment and entry chains, all work the same. I'm going to get rid of that again. I'm going to go back up to this green. And I'm going to go ahead and just pick this face. So if I preview that out, and I'm going to turn expand region off right now, and you'll see that expand region on my top view here puts a square corner right here. So your tool's not really going to be able to get there, and if you can't clean that up and you need to, you didn't have much option there in this tool path. So now with expand region in here, now I can preview that chain and you see how it added that radius in there. So now we can fully get a cleanup with our tool around there. So that is another enhancement 2021. We also have clearance on avoidance regions. So I'm just going to kind of show you that on one of these blue sections here. So if I go ahead and select a automatic region, just like I did before, on the avoidance regions, I can have a clearance value. Now, when you go to preview this, you're not going to see anything. It's not showing that. But if I come into the tool path here and just do a quick tool path, we will see it on the part once it generates. So my tool path is generating here, and now if I come and look at this, you'll see that I have 50 thousandths worth of clearance on that. So if we come in here and backplot this, this will show a little better of what I mean by that. So the previewer doesn't really show what you're getting there. You kind of got to look at the toolpath for that. And this is something I would imagine they're going to enhance. It just didn't make it into the previewer yet. So definitely check that out and see if that'll work for you. Automatic chaining like this is an evolving product in Mastercam, so I think you'll be seeing quite a bit more of it coming down the future. So try it out, see what you think, and try to utilize it the best you can. Let's go ahead and take a look at collisions in drill and drill segments is what they added in 2022. So in 2022 now we can check collisions on drill tool paths. So in this case here I have this part and I'm going to come ahead and drill these top holes and these 3 bottom holes. I have a chamfer drill tool path already created, and let's go ahead and look at some of our parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to set my tool projection at 2.1 inches. So I'm going to tell my tool to hang out 2.1 because I have no idea what I need for projection with that holder. Now if I come in here and go ahead and backplot this, it's going to do its drill tool path. And we're looking good here so far, looking good. And we're not looking so good there. So we have a collision with the holder. Inside of the tool path, we have a new feature in the linking parameters page, and it's going to be called check collisions here on the bottom. So if I go ahead and left click on check collisions, it brings me back to the page and it tells me out of them 6 holes, solid feature number 6 is a collision with your holder. So what you have is you have a holder clearance and a projection. The projection is currently 2.1 inches. That's what I set. Down below you're going to have reachable shoulder, unreachable shank, and unreachable holder. Well, this one is showing a little puck that is red, and it's saying the holder is hitting when we're cutting this hole. So what we have here is we can manually go and set our projection here, or we can hit this button here. It says optimize projection. So if I left click on that button, it optimized that. It makes my feature green now, good to go, and it set my projection at 2.246 with the clearance of 50 thou. So if I go ahead and rerun this, now my tool is going to come around, and when it gets to this 3rd hole where I had the collision before, now I have 50 thousandths worth of clearance on that holder. So as you can see, that is a nice little feature there to have. To check drill tool paths on the fly. Display collisions down here. If you change your linking parameters in here, it would display that if there's collisions as you change it. So that's what that button would be for down there. So definitely check out check collisions. It'd probably be well worth your time when you're doing drill tool paths to kind of try to shrink up your tools as tight as you can to the length you need of cut, and to gain some obviously gain some rigidity out of that. And last, let's go ahead and take a look at the new drill segments that they've added in 2022. So I have a file here, and I have a clamp, a pretty basic clamp, and it is a solid model. I want to come in here and I want to spot drill, I want to drill, and I want to counter bore these 2 holes here. And right off the bat, they are already defined from the solid model as a counter bore. So that makes it quite easy for me to select multiple ways. So I'm going to go up to my tool paths up on top, and I'm going to go to a simple drill tool path. Now there are multiple ways to select this solid feature in this case. If I want all the segments of these holes and I just want a single hole, I can just come inside of here and I can double click. And you'll see that it puts a green arrow on there like normal. And over in my features list, it shows an actual counter bore because that's what I picked. Another way that I could do this is I could come in here and I could hold down Control and double click, and it'll select all the matching features. In this case, there are two counter bores on here that are defined as counter bores. And as you can see over here, it shows that there's counter bore 1 and counter bore 2. So that would be the second way to pick this. Another way that I could come and pick this is I could come down to my solids tree down on the bottom left here. And in my solids history, I could go and actually pick the counter bore out of the solid histories tree. So this is new here. And you'll see on my screen that it picks them too. If I go back to my tool paths, now it's showing counter bore 1 or 2. So there's really 3 ways I could pick that: by just clicking on the feature, double clicking on the feature. Control double clicking on the feature will find all matching, or I could go right to my solids tree. So with these two counter bores in here, I'm going to go ahead and tool path this. Everything in here is going to look the same. So the first op that I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to spot drill this. So I'm going to go pick my spot drill out of the list. And all my cut parameters are exactly the same that I'm used to here, with the exception of hole segments. This is a new addition in here. Now, if you don't pick off of a solid model that has these features, you're not going to see any hole segments in here in this list. But since I did pick off of a solid model, it will detect that out of that model and give me my different segments. So in here I have a counter bore that it detected, I have a hole diameter that it detected, and a hole or a tool tip that it detected. Essentially right now the tool tip is right on the bottom of that counter bore. It's right there is what it's detecting. And could use that one maybe for my spot drill operation, as I will here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the tool tip, and I'm going to go to my linking parameters page. Now, there's a few changes in here. So anytime you're working off of a solid model, let's say I'm gonna do incremental programming this time. I'm gonna make sure down on the bottom here that I'm calculating my depth from the top of line or hole, specifically for my spot drill operation here. I don't want it to spot drill down in the bottom of this hole here. I want it to spot drill in the top. So that switch there is going to be important for this setup. You also have your calculate incremental values from holes and lines. Once again, important, so these numbers come out correct. And we also have automatic linking that we're going to come back and look at. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a depth at, let's just go negative 50 thousandths. So it's going to be negative 50 thou from my origin here, or the top of this hole. Nothing else here has changed, it's all the same. So let's go ahead and green check and see what we get. Now make sure you remember this generate toolpath option down here. And also another option in 2022 is I can move my part in the background now. So I can move that anywhere I want to go ahead and look at this in the background as I'm in these pages. So that is a very nice change also. So I'm going to go ahead and green check. And you'll see that I have a toolpath up here off of the solid model. So there's my spot drill there, and there's my spot drill there. So now I got plenty of clearance right here. So let's go ahead and force a collision in here. So instead of going a retract of a ½ inch, I'm going to retract 50 thousandths. Okay, and I'm going to green check, and that regenerates. And now what we're seeing is we're seeing a cut going through. So same exact cut, except for it's not model aware, and it's actually traveling right through my part, creating a collision there. So I could come back in here and I can say automatic linking up here. And it's going to say clearance has been changed to absolute, retract and feed planes have been set to incremental. So go ahead and hit OK. And you'll see that clearance turns on automatically here because it's model aware. Now I'll put a big number in here. Maybe I just want to clear by 1 inch. And my retract is still the same. It just turns this button on here. So now if I go ahead and green check this, now I'm clearing my model by 100 thousandths. And now I have a nice clearance plane without any collisions. So that's a nice little change there. Just make sure you're paying attention to what's offered up here. You know, arc fit maximum radius. That would be, instead of doing a square move here, it would do an arc in here. We can turn that on, and we can also output feed moves if you have issues with retracts. So there's my big old 1/2 inch arc line move now. And there it goes. And that might be a lot better, smoother, you know, transitional moves for your machine, depending on what you have there. So definitely keep these in mind. They're there to help you, and they'll definitely fix you up. And what I would do from this point on is I'm just going to copy this tool path down, and I'm going to copy it one more time down. And now I can just come in here, and I can go pick a tool, and I can say the 1/4 inch drill. And I can go to my hole segments again, and I'm going to say pick the hole diameter. So it knows where that hole is in that model. My linking parameters, I'm just going to go to a depth of 0, and I'm going to say my tip comp. So that'll kick it through. If I go ahead and green check this and turn that tool path on, you'll see that I'm not getting really what I want there. Now the reason for that is it only drilled to that point because, once again, of these control points in here. So if I come in here and uncheck that, now I can green check, and now I'm going through the bottom. So they're double-edged sword here, depending on what you're doing. You're either going to use it or you can't use it in this case. So now I have my secondary toolpath done. It automatically knows the depth because it's model aware. And now I can go to my third toolpath here, and I can go up to my toolpath type, and I can say, let's do a helix bore. I can pick my tool is going to be a flat end mill. And all of this stuff here would be just normal settings that you're used to as far as helix bore goes. Then my hole segments, I just pick the counter bore. Now once again, I don't have to go and set any depths this way. It'll be model aware. It knows the diameter and it knows the depth of that counter bore. And once again, in my linking parameters, I'm just going to say incremental 0. I retract a 1/2 inch in this case above. Maybe I wanted to bring that back down. So if I went 100 thou incremental, I'd want to turn on automatic linking again. That's going to kick on a clearance value, maybe of 1 inch. I can green check. And now my helix bore is in here. And it automatically is going to go down to the right depth, kick out, come back over and do the other one. So that is a very cool option, and there's pretty much how I would utilize it there. And a part like this, instead of trying to guess with everything and measure everything, maybe you could just utilize the model. Now, one thing about it here is in my solid tree, it's already defined. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to remove the history. And there's no history here. This is considered a stupid solid. So there's nothing here. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to recreate this. So in my solid tree, I'm going to add history. So we have the ability to add history here. So it doesn't know there's any counter bores on here. So in our add history dialog box, I can configure all hole operations. I can include split holes, face colors, extruded holes, fillets, whatever I want on there. And then I can give it a minimum and maximum radius. So I just gave it 0 to 500 inches in this case. I'm just going to green check. What it does, it says it's 3 holes were detected in one body. So now what it did is it popped a custom hole in there and a counter bore. So I can go ahead and select that counter bore now if I wanted to out of that tree, kind of like how I showed you in the selection methods before. So this is a handy tool to use going forward, and you can kind of see the direction Mastercam's going. Just trying to automate it out to make it easier for you so we don't have to select so many things. Definitely hope you can check that one out.